Greg Davis.
As you know, Madam Deputy Speaker, shale gas is 95% methane, and according to the IPCC, methane is 85 times more powerful than carbon dioxide for global warming, although the government's kept to the 2013 figure of 36 times. So that means, given that fugitive emissions are 5%, fracking is almost twice as bad as coal for global warming. And NASA has shown, and other satellite imaging, that basically the amount of methane has grown exponentially, having plateaued in the 1990s. So to fulfil our Paris commitments, we cannot go forward with fracking. But instead we see safeguards, we see tax incentives, and we see the displacement of renewables. We see the end of onshore wind, nothing much in terms of solar, not having Swansea tidal lagoon, etc. We should be having a completely different direction. And apart from the global warming issues, there's the issue of water. The Minister will know that millions of gallons of water with hundreds of toxic chemicals used as lubricants are pumped into the ground, and then half of it has to come back. Often it's carcinogenic or even radioactive. We simply haven't got the infrastructure to treat that water. We've got nowhere to put it, as they do in the United States. Of course, President Bush bypassed the Clean Air and the Clean Water Directive to allow fracking, so you'd have a strategic gain over Saudi Arabia. We're not in a position to do that sort of thing. We can't deal with the lorries to transport the wide environmental infrastructure. When I was a member of the Council of Europe, I put forward a paper, the exploration and exploitation of non-conventional hydrocarbons, that was adopted then by France, and indeed the Macron government decided on that basis to abolish and not to continue with fracking. I've got a fracking bill now that I urge the Minister to look at that says minimally we should ensure that fugitive emissions are limited to overall 1% and 0.1% at the wellhead, with capping and no flaring. Our children are telling us about climate change. We should take that seriously. And finally, with the possible advent of Brexit, we may be in the hands of big multinationals using tribunals to fine us. If we don't, once we start fracking, if we withdraw the tax concessions, they'll fine us. So in the case of Lone Pine versus Canada, they charged the Canadian government hundreds of millions of dollars because Quebec had a moratorium on fracking. Similarly, Wales doesn't want to do any fracking, and if we go ahead with Brexit and we go ahead with the way we've planned with fracking, we'll be under the cosh of multinationals, as well as breaking our Paris commitments and ruining the future for our children.